Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. I am Vishal Dahiya and you're watching the last episode of Big Picture of the year 2020. Now, 2020 has been a year of various twists and turns for all of us. The biggest challenge during this year was the COVID-19 pandemic, during which one of the phrase that is being positive had altogether a different connotation. And all of us tried to tackle this particular challenge in our own way. There were frontline warriors as well from various sectors which played a very important role in fighting this battle. But apart from that, there were several lessons as well to be learned from this particular pandemic period. A lot of positives out there. We learned how technology can play a very important role in life, and we utilize that as well on various aspects. Health sector seemingly came into a very renewed focus and several other aspects as well. So in this episode, in the next 25 odd minutes, we'll try and focus on those positives which we sort of collected during 2020, our learnings during this particular year. And for more on this, we're joined by a distinguished panel of guests. Let me first introduce them to you, beginning with, we have Mr. Abhishek Singh, the CEO of National E-Governance Division in the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology with Government of India. And we also have with us Ms. Urvashi Prasad, Public Policy Specialist in Niti Aayog, and Urmi Goswami is also joining us, Assistant Editor with Economic Times, keeps a tab on all these developments. Welcome, all of you, to Rajya Sabha Television. And let me begin with you, Urvashi. Let's start by taking stock of 2020 in terms of what exactly were the challenges and what we learned.
Yes, so Vishal, 2020, as you rightly said, was a very difficult year for all of us in many senses, but especially for the health sector, where we were faced with a very unprecedented challenge in the form of this pandemic. And it's important to note that this was, of course, unprecedented, not just for India, but for the whole world. So in that sense, the response that we managed to mount, faced with something very uncertain, very quickly evolving, is quite creditable. Of course, it's still not over, and the battle will continue in 2021. But what we managed to do from the perspective of the health system, in terms of course, you did mention our frontline warriors, and I think they are the first and foremost really positive, hugely positive takeaway from this year. Their sacrifices and their relentless service is something that, we will really take forward as an inspiration and also as a learning. But also certain systemic things that the system managed to, pull together, the collaboration between the center and the states, as well as the private sector and civil society. So we saw that when we have the will to do it, we can actually do it. We started off where we were not manufacturing almost any PPE kits in the country, no N95 masks. Today, where we are in a position where we can export these. So that's been a huge, learning for all of us, as well as the behavior change. I would say that, in India, we were not very used to some of these behaviors of, mask wearing and hand hygiene and hygiene in public places. So at least we've got some sort of, momentum on that. And of course, we need to take it forward. But that's also been an important front. And lastly, on the health sector, I would say the intersection with technology, the emergence of telemedicine, all of these have also been big positives for us, which I'm sure we can build in the future as well.
Okay, definitely. We'll talk about the building on health infrastructure out there, a very crucial sector. But since you also mentioned technology, Urvashi, and let me bring in Mr. Abhishek Singh here. All of us know, Mr. Singh, that digital technology, to be very specific, has played a very, very big and very important role in this battle against COVID-19 in almost all aspects. So if you could take us through in terms of, how difficult or easy was it to go ahead and bring the digital technology into picture and then weave this into almost all aspects of our life?
See, as you rightly said, digital technologies have kind of the growth in digital technology that we have seen in the current year has been like unprecedented in the previous years. And I very often quote this WhatsApp forward that I got, like various CEOs were asked, like what drove digital adoption in their organizations. The first was the CTO, the CEO, or COVID-19. So very often it's believed that the COVID-19 led to digital adoption in organizations, whether private or government, in a way that was unprecedented. Of course, the lockdown and all made people work from home, and that led to evolving video conferencing solutions, working in collaborative mode from wherever people were staying, and ensuring that life continues normal. And not only the private sector, big tech companies adopted to it, the pace at which the government adopted to it, especially with the VPNs and with e-office functioning, emails functioning, VC meetings being held, and everything continued as it was normal. When we look at the distress that was caused for people across the country, people who lost their livelihoods, people who were poor, people who needed benefits, the direct benefit transfer ensured that the money that was due to them reached into their bank accounts, and business correspondents at a nearby place, at a common service center in the villages, were able to give cash to people that helped them tide over this crisis. And when it comes to COVID-19 management itself, the very success of the contact tracing app that India developed, the Aayog Setu app, which has been adopted by more than 164 million people today, led to very effective monitoring of people who were coming in contact with anyone who was Bluetooth positive. Then we look into the impact in this e-learning phase in the schools, the pace at which schools adopted e-learning, whether it's on Google Meet or Geo Meet or Zoom or Microsoft Teams, it was very fast to adopt that. Then when you look at telemedicine solution, the e-Sanjeevani solution developed by CDAC has in no time has got more than 12 lakh consultations which has been done. And this all points to, and the National Digital Health Mission was launched in 15th of August by Honorable Prime Minister, and already it's operational in all the 6 union territories and likely to be expanded to the rest of the country. And if you look at the COVID-19 communication, the behavioral change that was driven, and which I was associated with as part of MyGov, because very often to communicate things with regard to what is quarantine or what is social distancing, if we wind back to February, these terms were not known, they were not part of a lexicon. But today we all understand what it is behavioral change, how to do hand washing, how to manage stress. So all that technology played a big role in ensuring that everybody adopt to a behavior which is required for doing that. And as we go ahead, the vaccine has been is almost arriving in India. The kind of collaboration that has happened across the world between research labs, between pharma companies, and between production centers, vaccine production centers, it's unprecedented. The world has shown that technology is a big uniter, technology is a big enabler, and it can be used to solve global problems at a scale.
Okay, so indeed, as you're pointing out, Mr. Singh, that 2020 was the year when adoption of digital technology, gained a renewed momentum, and it almost became part of our daily lives now. And in fact, the conversation which is happening between all of us right now is through also a digital technology platform. So that brings me to Urmi here. Urmi, not only health and digital infrastructure, but there were other aspects as well. And all of us, reminisce about those first 2-3 months of lockdown when there was a lot of positive impact on environment as well. For people in metro cities, the pollution levels did come down, and we learned some lessons that, the nature needs to be respected.
Right. One of the biggest sort of takeaways from this year is the can-do spirit. We can, if we put our mind to it, work together. And both Urvashi and Mrs. Singh have detailed the effects of these, or the examples of this can-do spirit. So that's the first very important takeaway. And the question now is about carrying over the spirit to other areas. Now, you mentioned the environment, the lockdown, the impacts. Now, this is surely no way we want to have cleaner air, which is bringing the economy to a standstill, putting people's health in jeopardy. That's not the way to do it. But the question really is, are we taking that learning forward? Are we taking the measures that will ensure that whatever gains were made will be translated into long-term gains? And that is where the action needs to happen. So yes, what we have proven in 2020 is that if we put our minds to it, things that seemed impossible for us are within reach. This is a country where healthcare is not in the best of situations, and yet we have proven that we can manage, and we can marshal all our strengths together to deliver. The question then is, are we putting that same effort to marshal all our efforts
to delivering better, cleaner environment for ourselves, for our children, and for generations to come. And I think that is where action needs to happen. So today we are seeing a revival in the economy. We are talking about the auto sector, but we are not talking about public transport. I think this is where the conversation needs to change. So we have to take our can do sort of spirit and can do experience to areas where we haven't ventured into before. So yes, we shouldn't be looking at 2020 was a terrible year in more ways than one. The real question is there something we have learned out of this terrible experience? I think that is what should be visible in 2021, and I hope that is visible.
Okay, definitely learning lessons from difficult times and that can-do spirit, which Urmi was talking about. Urvashi, that brings me back on the question of infrastructure in critical areas. And since we were earlier talking about health and technology sector as well. So if I come to health now, there is a need to go ahead and augment the health infrastructure, that need which all of us felt at all levels within the government, within the private sector as well. Common people also believe that, yes, there is a need to give that push to the health infra. So how are we moving on that particular aspect, and what should be done in the next year or 2 years to ensure that we are better prepared if at all, we are faced with such a challenge again?
Yes, so I think one aspect of that is the physical infrastructure, but the other is actually the human resource capacity, and that's in fact a very big learning for us coming out of this pandemic. That you can create a sort of quick makeshift ICU, you can create some hospital beds relatively quickly, but to get trained people to operate them is something else. So we need to invest in this human resource capacity at all levels. Of course, we need doctors and specialists, but we also need public health professionals. And I think that's been one of the biggest takeaways from this year, and will hopefully be a positive coming out of this year, that we will really focus on public health. We will, of course, put in the financial resources it needs, but also more importantly, the systemic changes in terms of bringing in a public health cadre, for instance. That is something that is a direction that we really need to take. Of course, we need to also increase access to facilities and make sure that they are not just in our metros or in our larger urban centers, but also in our tier 2, tier 3 cities, smaller towns, villages. And of course, Ayushman Bharat does endeavor to do that. So as we continue to expand the scheme, we need to have a public-private partnership and make sure that we can provide access to health services in all these areas at an affordable cost. But I think here is also where telemedicine can play a big role, because, everything, what this year has taught us is that for everything, you don't need to necessarily go into a clinic or into a hospital. For many things, at least your first round of consultation can be taken care of remotely. So if we can increase the penetration of telemedicine and really bring in more and more providers, as well as expand its access to different parts of the country, then that also holds a lot of potential. It's not a substitute for everything else that we need to do in terms of the physical infrastructure, the human resource capacity, but it can certainly be a very, very important additional aspect to boost the whole health system.
Okay, definitely. Boosting the health system is one part out there. Urmi, would you agree on those parts? And also adding here, if I might, that investment in several other allied sectors as well. For example, investments in biotech, the pharma industry, research and development, that is where also a similar push is required, and that should sort of a holistic way of looking at solutions, what Urvashi was talking about, not only physical infrastructure but human resource as well as science and tech, research and development as well.
It's not just holistic, it has to be across the board. One of the biggest learnings, besides the discovery of our can-do spirit from 2020, is the fact that you cannot approach the world in silos. So you can't be tinkering with the health services while not tinkering with, say, environmental conditions, environmental well-being. You can't be looking at health services and not looking at educational infrastructure. Now, that is one of the big takeaways. So yes, there is a need to look at it across the board. It is not just looking at one part. You have to see, if we are talking about improving telemedicine, yes, it's important, it's another tool, but should it come at the cost of some other system which will actually increase access to healthcare. No, it shouldn't. So we have to keep, it's about balancing. It's looking not just at the little pieces, but looking at the whole puzzle properly. That's
Okay.
one. The second part of it is that we need to be able to appreciate the fact that there have been some policy decisions that have been made in the past year. One key policy decision is in the area of education, the national education policy, which actually looks at education in a very different way from the one which we are used to. Now, that again, these are the things we need to take forward. It is not just looking at, when we are talking about health infrastructure, digital infrastructure, we shouldn't forget that when you're talking about, human resource, there is a need to focus on the education side of it. So
Okay.
all these various prongs have to be looked at together. And I think that is the biggest lesson, because one thing we must remember is that the pandemic that happened is not a one-off. Scientists do tell us that more such pandemics may not be at this scale, but will likely happen. And we need to be not only be resilient for the future, but we need to avoid a situation where that happens. And I think if 2020 taught us something, is the value of not just looking at the world in silos, but looking at it in an integrated manner.
Okay, definitely looking at things in an integrated manner, and a push is required across the board as well. Mr. Singh, if you look at the digital infrastructure, and since the technology is here to stay and there will be a lot of changes in the technology as well, the way we do things has already undergone a sea change in the past 8 to 9 months. So how do you see things moving from here onwards vis-a-vis the human tech interface?
So what I feel is that in the year to come and in the times to come, the pace at which digital technologies will be consumed by people and will play a role will go up rapidly. With the BharatNet projects, hopefully the villages will be connected with the optical fibers, just like the way electrification of villages was done in a mission mode. So I hope that in the days to come, once the villages get on, then the larger population, like as we know, 64% of India lives in villages. So if these people get onto the digital economy and they start getting benefited by e-learning, by telemedicine, by digital businesses, by e-commerce, people get onto that, it will yield huge dividends for our economy. The other big positive that I see in the years to come, based on what we have seen in the current year, is the strength of the Indian startup ecosystem. So when we see this year, like whether it was the app innovation challenge that was launched, or the AI conference that we did, or the video conferencing solution that we built, more and more Indian tech startups are coming ahead and building solutions using cutting edge artificial intelligence, blockchain, IoT, and these solutions are being tested in India and being deployed for the world. So in the days to come, in the year to come, I feel very strongly about Indian startup ecosystem, especially in the technology space, and they will be dominating the world markets, not only Indian markets, but we will see more health solutions coming up, like the diabetic retinopathy solution that we saw, the breast cancer scanning solution using AI we saw. We have seen AI solutions, smart mobility. We have seen AI solutions in e-learning. So in the year to come, we will see more of that coming up, and India taking up a larger slice of the digital economy of the world. And we, with the PLI scheme, which has been launched up, which has led to all major manufacturing, electronics manufacturing companies setting up shop in India and looking at a China plus one policy. So a lot of manufacturing, electronics manufacturing is going to move to India, and that will be a big plus, because once electronics high-end manufacturing comes in, it will be followed by other manufacturing items also. So that means a lot of positive for the economy as such. And I'm very hopeful that whatever we have lost, almost a year and a half has been lost as far as the economy and the GDP is concerned, we will be regaining most of it in the next 6 to 9 months, and we will be back in track in the coming year.
Okay, so we'll be back in the track in the coming years. That's what obviously the hope is, and the indications are also positive on that aspect in the past few months. The way various sectors of the economy have picked up looks like we're going to do all better. Before we bring this discussion to an end, I'd like to put a small and a simple question to all three of you. That is, how all of you would sum up the year that 2020 was. Let's begin with you, Urvashi, there.
I think, we faced extreme challenges, and I think that also brought out the best in many of us, and I think our frontline workers. I mean, I would just like to really pay a tribute to them because they were dealing with the completely unknown situation. They often did not even have the requisite tools at hand, did not know how to go about things, but really selflessly they've continued to battle. And they're still doing it at the cost of their own health, the security, safety of their families. So I think for me, the biggest positive story is the resilience of our frontline workers. And there's so much that we can learn from them as we go forward from here. So it's really, finally, I think I would just pay a tribute to them. And I think for me, this year is really all about them.
Okay, indeed, the frontline workers are the one who does deserve all the respect we can give them for the hard work which they did. Urmi, from your point of view?
Well, this year is about India's can-do spirit, whether it is the frontline workers or others who worked behind the scenes. It showed that individually and collectively we can come together and meet challenges. It also is a moment of great opportunity for us. It is a moment where we choose, do we want to build back to where we were, or do we want to build back better? And so it is a discovery of our strength as well as an opportunity to build on that strength. So that is what this year is for me.
Okay, definitely. Mr. Singh, concluding comments from you on the year 2020 that was.
2020 has been a defining year in our history, in the world's history, and it has shown how the world can come together to solve global problems at scale. India in particular, as mentioned by Urmi and Urvashi, is shown its strength and resilience of facing a hardship of this magnitude and still coming out. Because even though we got the second highest number of cases in the world, but our fatality rates kept low, even though we do not have the best of the health infrastructure. We did not have any starvation deaths. Our agriculture produce was booming, and we ensured that all basic systems continued to run. There's no shortage of vegetables. There's no shortage of food grains, midday meals, or the PDS continued running during the lockdown period also. It shows that the systems that we have, the institutions that we have, and the strength that we have as a nation is there, which can stand such challenges. And this is what will help us to bounce back. And this is the opportunity that we have. And in the coming year, hopefully, we will be together able to face these challenges and come up as a strong nation across the world.
Okay, there it is. Thank you so much, Mr. Abhishek Singh, Ms. Urvashi Prasad, and Urmi Goswami there, as well as our panelists were pointing out clearly the year 2020 has been full of resilience, strength, and the can-do spirit, and also showed that we can obviously go ahead and fight all the challenges, tackle all of them, find a way, and build our future as well. So 2021 will be the year full of hopes in all aspects, be it the finding of a cure, that is the vaccine for the COVID-19, or the economic recovery as well. I would once again like to take this opportunity to wish all our panelists and our viewers, on behalf of all my colleagues at Rajya Sabha Television, a very happy new year. And please do not forget to follow the COVID appropriate behavior. Stay safe. Take care. Thank you.